My sister slid the manila envelope across the table and said, "You have 3 days to get out. The house is mine now." I stood up and walked out. I used to believe one day they'd see me, really see me. That maybe if I just kept being the responsible daughter, the one who cleaned up after everyone's emotional messes without complaint, someone in my family would finally say, "Thank you. We're proud of you." Instead, last night I watched them choose silence. Again. The mahogany table glowed under the weight of candles and Grandma Eleanor's vintage china. My mother smiled through her nerves. My father fixated on his untouched glass of wine, and across from me, Amber, my sister, smirked like a predator. She had worn that expression since we were kids. I used to think it meant I'd done something wrong. Now I know it was satisfaction. A private celebration of power, 3 days. That's what she gave me. 3 days to pack up my life and get out of the only home that ever truly felt like mine. My childhood bedroom, the rose garden where Grandma taught me about patience, the fireplace we huddled around during snowstorms, all of it gone. Rewritten in an inheritance document I never saw coming, but maybe I should have. We grew up in a colonial-style house in Greenwich, Connecticut. Polished floors, a sprawling backyard, a white picket fence people dream of. To outsiders, it looked like a picture-perfect life. But inside those walls, there was always a quiet war one fought in glances, in who got attention, in who got left behind. My sister Amber was 2 years younger, but always miles ahead in our parents' eyes. She played tennis, they cheered courtside. I gave a speech at my Cornell graduation. They had a prior engagement. Her wedding photos were professionally framed in every hallway. My graduate degree tucked behind a stack of old National Geographics in the study. It was Grandma Eleanor who saw me, who really knew me. On humid summer days, she'd hand me a pair of gloves and lead me to the rose garden behind the house. Roses need patience and care. She'd say, her voice gravelly from years of wisdom, just like relationships. Ignore them and they'll wilt. But if you listen, really listen, they'll show you how to thrive. I used to think she meant the flowers. She was the only one who didn't play favorites. She came to my debates, mailed me articles about financial literacy. When I landed my first internship, even sent handwritten notes when I got promoted at Morgan Stanley. "You have staying power," she once told me when Amber was getting all the attention for her society wedding. "Your sister is flash, but you're the foundation." 3 months ago, I lost my job. Corporate restructuring. 6 years of loyalty, and suddenly I was no longer aligned with their growth strategy. I cried in the elevator. Then I came home. When I showed up at my parents' door with 2 suitcases and a tight smile, Mom made my favorite lasagna, and Dad helped carry my boxes upstairs. They said all the right things. "Stay as long as you need. We're proud of how far you've come." I believed them, because I wanted to. But cracks appeared almost immediately. Mail started going missing. Conversation stopped when I entered the room. I caught my name in whispers. "We can't talk about this now," Mom hissed once before glancing nervously over her shoulder. Amber, who rarely visited, was suddenly there all the time, showing up during my job interviews or while I was out sending resumes. I'd walk in and find the 3 of them huddled around papers quickly shuffled away when I approached. And then came the dinner. I knew something was off when Mom brought out the good crystal. The table was set like a holiday, the air thick with unsaid things. My name card was placed directly across from Amber's, not beside Mom like usual. My back to the window, her eyes in my face. She smiled, and when dessert was cleared, she reached into that stiff leather handbag and pulled out the envelope that changed everything. The house. Grandma's house. My home. Left to Amber. Not me. As she slid the document across the table, she said it like it was business. "You have 3 days to leave." And my parents said nothing, not even a whisper of protest, not even a glance. Just silence. My fingers didn't touch the paper. My heart did. It splintered into something I wouldn't fully understand until hours later, locked in my childhood bedroom, staring at Grandma's locket and asking a question no one could answer. How do you lose everything? In a house you thought was yours. And what do you do when the people who raised you choose to let it happen? I'll tell you, you fight. But not the way they expect. You fight quietly, and you make sure the truth rises like a garden no one thought could bloom again. Because Grandma was right. Patience, care, and staying power. That's what I have. They just forgot. But they're about to remember. It started with Grandma's roses. The morning after the dinner, I stepped outside barefoot into the dewy grass, still in my pajamas, eyes swollen from a night of sleepless sobbing. I found myself drawn to the back garden where her rose bushes grew like sentinels, tangled wild and somehow still standing tall. She used to say that roses remember who waters them. I knelt beside the red one she named Perseverance and touched a petal gently. It was the only place on the property that felt safe now. Everywhere else in the house had become foreign. My childhood bedroom now felt like a ticking clock, a space counting down to my eviction. The kitchen smelled like betrayal masked in pancake batter. The living room echoed with ghosts of trust. And the dining room, the scene of my ambush, might as well have been a courtroom my sentence passed without a trial. I couldn't cry anymore. My body wouldn't let me. I had entered the phase of betrayal that is quiet and sharp, where emotions turn to calculation. It was there, crouched in the dirt of Grandma's garden, that something shifted inside me. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to find them in whispered excuses or silent stares. Back in my room, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a small wooden box where I had kept every letter Grandma Eleanor ever wrote me. Thick cardstock, deep green ink, her handwriting always a mix of elegance and unfiltered truth. I reread one, dated the spring of my college graduation. Success. My dear is not measured by applause, it's measured by how you treat yourself in silence. And if they ever try to take what's yours, remember the truth has its own timeline. You just need to endure long enough to meet it. Those words hit different now. That day, I made my first call to Nancy, my old co-worker, and one of the few friends I had left. We hadn't spoken in a few weeks, but when she answered and heard the tremble in my voice, she didn't hesitate. "Come crash on my couch. As long as you need," she said. I felt relief wash over me like a lifeline tossed into cold water, but I also knew I wasn't leaving just yet. Not without a fight, not without knowing why Grandma changed her will, or if she even truly did. The next clue came from Mildred Henshaw. I hadn't thought of her in years, but she'd been Grandma's closest friend. They used to meet every week at the Bluebird Cafe for cinnamon scones and scandalous gossip. I remembered her warm laugh, the way she wore silk scarves no matter the weather. I tracked down her number from an old Christmas card. When she picked up, her voice was as crisp as I remembered. "Rebecca." "Oh, thank heavens. I've been trying to reach you since the funeral. Your mother told me you weren't taking calls." My chest tightened. I never got any messages. "Well," she said carefully, "then perhaps you should know something. Eleanor told me just weeks before she passed that she was leaving you the house. She was very clear about it. It felt like air whooshed out of the room. She said the house should stay with the one who loved it, not the one who saw it as a transaction." Mildred continued. Amber was to receive her share through the investment accounts. That was what she said. I remember it like scripture. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed. Then something's not right. The will says Amber owns the house. I have 3 days to get out. There was a pause, heavy with implication. "Bradford Thornton," she said finally. "That's the name of the new lawyer who showed up near the end. He wasn't Eleanor's usual attorney. And let's just say, he gave me a very bad feeling." I thanked her, my hands shaking as I hung up. Bradford Thornton. The name had weight. It sounded like someone who charged hourly rates for treachery. Using Dad's old laptop, I searched late into the night. Thornton was real. High-end estate attorney, slick website, and one damning detail, a glowing testimonial on his homepage from Harrison Chapman Amber's husband. It all clicked then. The visits, the hushed conversations, the missing mail, the updated will, they planned it. Amber needed the house, Harrison's investments were rumored to be tanking. The property could be used for collateral or sold. And I, jobless, dependent, and temporarily vulnerable, was the easiest piece to remove from the board. And they did it while feeding me lasagna and promises of support. That night, I stared at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom and let it all sink in. My parents complicit. My sister cunning. My grandma likely manipulated in her final weeks when the pain meds blurred the edges of her mind, but not blurred enough. She left trails, and I was going to follow them. Before I fell asleep, I texted Nancy, "One more thing, I'm coming over Monday. But first I have work to do," because they thought I was beaten, but they forgot I'm Grandma Eleanor's girl. And the truth. The truth is stubborn, just like me. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay in bed staring at the shadows on the ceiling, Grandma's words echoing in my mind like a quiet drumbeat. The truth has its own timeline. You just need to endure long enough to meet it. By sunrise, I wasn't crying anymore. I was calculating. The house felt like enemy territory now. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like judgment. Every family photo on the walls felt like a lie. I moved carefully, quietly, as if I were a stranger in my own home. Or a spy. I waited until my parents left for their Saturday errands, their usual bridge game and late brunch with friends. Amber had returned to her estate in Westport after delivering her ultimatum the night before. I was alone. Finally. I made my move. Dad had always kept important documents in his study, a room we were never allowed to enter growing up unless invited. But he wasn't exactly subtle with passwords. The one for his computer, my mom's birthday. The same one he'd used since AOL days. Within 5 minutes, I was inside his email, and what I found there made my blood run cold. Thread after thread between Dad Amber Harrison and Bradford Thornton. Discussions about Eleanor's revised will, strategizing how to manage Rebecca's reaction, legalese tossed around like popcorn property titles, quiet possession, minimizing objections. One email from Amber chilled me more than anything. "Once everything is transferred, we'll honor our agreement about your continued residence. Just make sure Rebecca doesn't suspect anything until it's finalized." I felt physically ill. My parents had bartered my trust for a place to live. Even worse, there were attachments. PDF scans labeled Eleanor Medical Summary Cognitive Evaluation, Final Will Signed. I opened them. One file was a physician's report from just 10 days before Grandma passed. The doctor had clearly marked patient frequently disoriented due to high-dose medication. Capacity to make complex decisions questionable during peak symptom periods. The date of her new will, the day after that note. They knew. They all knew she wasn't of sound mind, and they pushed the papers in front of her anyway. Likely coached her, reassured her, promised her it was just a formality. And my parents stood by and let it happen. In a hidden folder on Dad's desktop labeled Private Financials, I found the final piece of the puzzle. Harrison and Amber's real estate company was underwater. Multiple foreclosures, negative cash flow, desperate. They'd needed collateral fast. And Grandma's house, my home, was worth nearly $1.7 million. It wasn't about winning some sibling rivalry. It wasn't about legacy or fairness. It was survival for them. And sacrifice for me. I copied everything onto a flash drive, my hands trembling with adrenaline and rage. As I backed out of the system, I heard the garage door rumble open downstairs. Too early. They were home. I shoved the flash drive into my bra and shut down the computer, scrambling to relock the office as footsteps echoed in the hall. Rebecca Mom's voice called from the kitchen. I stepped out of the study like nothing had happened, wiping my sweaty palms on my jeans. "Just getting some air," I said with a casual shrug. Mom nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "There's coffee if you want it." I sat across from her watching the steam rise from our mugs like ghosts. For a moment, I thought I might explode scream cues, throw the cup into the wall. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at her with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. "How could you?" I finally whispered. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred her coffee over and over until the spoon clinked against the porcelain. "We didn't have a choice," she murmured. "Amber and Harrison." They promised we could stay. You're strong, Rebecca. You'd land on your feet. That lie. That damn lie. They sold me out because it was convenient, because I was strong enough to survive it. Dad walked in, then avoiding my eyes as he reached for the cream. I know everything I said without raising my voice. The emails, the will, Grandma's condition, the plan to use the house for a loan. The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca, Dad started, but I cut him off. Don't. You used Grandma's confusion to get what you wanted, and you let Amber make me the scapegoat. Again. He opened his mouth, then closed it. No excuses, no defense. I stood. You have until Monday to decide whether you're going to help me fix this or whether you're going to watch me burn it down in court. And then I left the kitchen. That night, I emailed every piece of evidence to 3 places: my personal cloud drive, Nancy's email, and a backup account Amber didn't know existed. I wasn't going to lose the only leverage I had. I also made 2 more calls. The first was to Mildred, asking for a sworn affidavit of Eleanor's intentions. The second to Grandma's original attorney, Lawrence Phillips. He answered on the 3rd ring voice, gravelly and cautious. But when I told him who I was and what I'd found, he said something that cemented my path forward. Eleanor never intended for this house to go to Amber. If that will was changed, it wasn't her doing, not in the state I last saw her. I'll help you. Whatever you need. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't sleep that night either. But it wasn't fear that kept me awake. It was fire. Amber thought I'd quietly disappear. My parents thought I'd fold under pressure. But what they forgot, what they always forgot, was that I was Grandma Eleanor's girl. And I wasn't going anywhere. I left the house Monday morning with nothing but a suitcase, a laptop bag, and the flash drive tucked securely into my coat pocket. I didn't say goodbye. As I pulled away from the driveway, I caught a glimpse of the rose bushes in the rearview mirror, still blooming, stubborn and proud. Just like her. Just like me. Nancy greeted me with open arms and a steaming mug of peppermint tea. Her downtown apartment was small, cluttered with books and framed art, but it felt like safety, like oxygen. I sank into her couch, dropped my bags, and whispered, "I'm going to burn them down." She didn't flinch, just passed me a cinnamon scone and said, "Good. Let's begin." I spent the next 48 hours in a blur of documents, calls, and strategy. Lawrence Phillips. Grandma's original attorney confirmed that he had Eleanor's last intended will saved in his files. She had made an appointment to sign it, but never showed, because Bradford Thornton had intercepted her. That was the beginning of their plan. I filed for an emergency injunction to freeze the property deed. It wasn't easy. Thornton had already submitted the final will to probate court, but thanks to the medical evidence and Mildred's affidavit, we had enough to trigger a review. It bought me time. Not much, but enough. Amber's name hadn't been officially recorded as sole owner yet, and the moment we filed the injunction, the county clerk's office flagged the transfer, which meant one thing she knew. By Thursday morning, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Rebecca Amber's voice slid through the receiver like oil. "I heard about your little tantrum." I didn't speak. She chuckled. "You don't have a leg to stand on." Grandma changed her mind. "Get over it." I finally replied, calm and clear. "Your husband's emails say otherwise. So do Dad's. And so does the physician who saw Grandma the day before that will was signed. You pushed her when she couldn't even remember what day it was." A pause. "Then you wouldn't dare drag this family through court." "Oh," I said with a smile she couldn't see. "Watch me." She hung up without another word. That same day, I got a message from Lawrence Thornton was backing off. The threat of an ethics investigation into his handling of Eleanor's estate was enough to rattle even his high-powered confidence. Still, the family began damage control. Mom called her voice small. "Sweetheart, maybe we all overreacted. Let's sit down as a family and talk." "No," I said. "Not until it's in writing." Dad sent an email apologizing vaguely for any misunderstanding. Harrison even reached out offering a financial settlement to smooth things over. But I didn't want money. I wanted truth. I wanted accountability. And most of all, I wanted them to understand that I wasn't the girl they could silence anymore. We scheduled a court hearing for the following Friday, the night before I returned to the house one last time. Not to stay, but to walk the property, breathe it in. The rose bushes glowed silver under the moonlight. A breeze stirred the leaves of Grandma's old oak tree. I stood barefoot in the grass, just like I had that morning after the dinner, and whispered, "I'm doing it, Grandma. I'm not letting them erase you." Behind me, the front porch light flicked on. My father stepped outside, looking older than I remembered. "You really going through with this?" he asked. "Yes." A long silence passed between us. He swallowed hard. "You always were the one who saw her clearly. That nearly broke me." But I turned and walked away, whispering without looking back. That's because I listened. The courthouse smelled like dust and lemon polish, cold, sterile, impersonal, but I walked in like it was sacred ground. Nancy walked beside me, crisp in her black suit. Lawrence followed, carrying a thick file of motions emails, affidavits. We weren't just walking into court, we were walking into battle. And this time, I wasn't outnumbered. Amber was already inside, seated at the opposing table with her husband and a lawyer. So slick, he looked laminated. She didn't look at me, just kept tapping her acrylic nails against her phone screen. Dad sat behind her. So did Mom. Harrison leaned forward in his chair, jaw tight. Not a single one of them made eye contact, but I felt Grandma with me. The judge, a woman in her late 60s, glanced at the two tables, then adjusted her glasses. Let's begin. The early proceedings were procedural. Motions, objections, arguments about timing, jurisdiction, credibility. Amber's attorney tried to paint me as the emotional granddaughter who couldn't accept her grandmother's change of heart. Until Lawrence stood, he began with the medical records, clear notes from Grandma's primary doctor indicating severe cognitive decline in the months leading up to the new will. Then he read an email from Eleanor's physician, dated 3 days before the updated document, expressing concern that Ms. Eleanor Blackwell was no longer competent to make legal decisions. Next came the emails from Thornton, revealing coordination with Amber and Harrison about finalizing things quickly. He even referenced a difficult granddaughter, warning Amber to keep her away from any future estate meetings. Finally, we introduced the unsigned draft of Grandma's last intended will, naming me, not Amber, as the inheritor of the property, and including a heartfelt letter she never mailed. The courtroom was silent. Amber's attorney scrambled, tried to cast doubt, questioned the timeline, but it was unraveling fast, and then came the moment I didn't expect. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Blackwell, do you have anything to say, not as a claimant, but as Eleanor's granddaughter?" I stood slowly. My voice was clear. My hands didn't shake. She raised me when no one else would. She believed in me before I knew how to believe in myself. And that house, those roses, the creaky porch, the smell of lemon tea, it wasn't just property, it was her legacy, her love. I looked straight at Amber. And I'm not here because I need it. I'm here because she asked me to protect it. Amber finally looked up. Her face was pale. Her eyes narrowed like she was about to speak, but nothing came. The judge recessed for lunch. Outside, Amber followed me into the hallway. "You think you've won something," she hissed. I didn't flinch, not yet. But I'm no longer afraid of losing you. That's the difference. She looked at me like I was speaking a language she didn't understand. And maybe I was. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting for a seat at their table. I was protecting something bigger, something they would never touch again. When court resumed, the judge ruled in our favor. The updated will was declared void. Probate was reopened based on the original intent, and while the fight wasn't over, the path was finally just. And Amber. Her lawyer stepped back, quietly, efficiently, because now every move was on record. Every signature scrutinized, every email admissible. A month later, the house smelled like roses again. Real ones this time, fresh cut from the garden, blooming wild and fragrant in the late spring sun. The lawn was overgrown, the shutters chipped, but it didn't matter. I had the keys, and the deed, and something even more powerful, the truth. Nancy had offered to walk through the final paperwork with me, but I told her I wanted to do it alone. I stepped inside slowly. Every creak in the floorboard was familiar, like a whisper from the past. The old grandfather clock in the corner had stopped ticking years ago, but I didn't restart it. Time in this house belonged to Grandma. In the front room, I found her letter, not the one we used in court, a different one. Hidden in the drawer of her sewing desk under faded quilt squares and antique spools of thread, it was written in trembling cursive on yellowing paper that smelled faintly of lavender. My sweet Rebecca. If you're reading this, then maybe things didn't go the way I hoped. Maybe people said things behind closed doors again. Maybe you were made to feel small again. But I want you to remember this. You were never less. Not one day in your life. You gave up so much for this family. You carried dignity where others carried entitlement. And if the time comes that you have to fight for what's yours, don't do it with anger. Do it with grace. The world doesn't always reward the loudest voice. Sometimes it remembers the quiet one who stood up anyway. I love you. This house is yours, not because of blood, but because of love. Grandma. I folded the letter and held it against my heart. Outside, the roses swayed gently. I walked to the back porch and sat on the swing, her swing, watching the petals flutter. I didn't gloat. I didn't send a single message to Amber or Harrison or Mom. But I knew they saw the headline quietly circulating, "Probate Dispute Overturned, Blackwell Heir Reinstated." Nancy told me later that Harrison had tried to approach the court for a restraining motion to block future access. It was denied. And Amber, she put the mansion up for sale within a week. Funny thing was, even with all her ambition, no one wanted to work with her anymore. Thornton was under investigation, and her husband filed for separation. As for me, I donated a portion of Grandma's restored estate to build a public legal fund for women dealing with elder fraud and inheritance abuse. It's named after Eleanor Blackwell. People send letters now, emails, women who went through the same thing quietly, alone. And I answer everyone. I remind them they're not invisible. That quiet doesn't mean weak, and that sometimes silence is power waiting to speak. Have you ever been erased by your own family only to find your voice later? Tell your story in the comments. And if this one stayed with you, subscribe for more. We're just getting started.